of the written literature in Afghanistan was produced by males. Most of the oral literature in Afghanistan is probably product of women. The landais, as Spoon has shown, are not gender. You cannot tell from a landai whether the speaker is male or female. And it's extremely important that women have contributed in enormous way to this literature. The other thing, of course, is that women have all along in the course of creation of the history through the literature have been symbols of patriotism. Let's not forget the pride of Afghans and the Malala, or their pride is reading the works of Azarmuna or Nauzu. What is critical here about the oral literature, of course, is given the 32 languages of Afghanistan, that it is not a single history with a capital H, but this phenomenally rich varieties of history that come together. I still remember a song which was very much sung in our family wedding about the injustice of Abdurrahman, how he destroyed. And this is a song we sang at weddings. So that an alternative history to the history of the state was continuously projected for oral literature. What has been enormously unfortunate, and here I want to come to some suggestions about the future, we have no good record of the poetry that was produced after the first Anglo-Afghan War or the second Anglo-Afghan War, because there's very little that is actually been preserved. Oral literature goes. The issue to which I call the attention of everybody here, of course, is recording. We have been in a period of enormous productivity, especially in terms of oral literature, especially in terms of the songs of the women, where their voice and their concern are very evident. One of the things that I've proposed is creation of an oral archive to immediately start documenting the variety of experiences and voices about the war before it's too long. A second issue is equally important. That is, we need to remind the world of the genocide in Afghanistan. We need a museum of resistance. We need to document in full what has been done to the Afghan landscape and what has been done to the Afghan people. Not just that we are victims, but also because we have been conquered. And this is important to create this photography would be extremely important. I'm delighted with the work that Haji Dawood and his associates have been doing. And it's extremely worth the effort and needs furthering because this would allow us to come back and retrieve a lot that is needed. The third thing that I would really want to call attention to in terms of foreigners helping Afghans help Afghans is in creation of textbooks. We need some of the best minds, men, women and men, to work on creating textbooks, school textbooks, elementary textbooks, middle school, all the way for the children of the future. We have to figure both its symbolic structure and its method and process as learning. And last, where I conclude, is of course help in allowing us in us taking part to preserve our plurality. During this phase, we've acquired plurality, multiple voices. Let us not regress back to a level where censorship intervenes continuously between the writer and the audience. Let us, for once, discuss our past, our present, and our future with respect to each other's opinion, without accusation, but in a free spirit, where we can settle the score of the past in order to build the United Nations in the future. Thanks. I shift back to my other capacity as the unwieldy chair. And yeah, this is my last act before I take off for Salzburg. have now. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Abdul Wasi Najibi, uh, who will speak about the Museum of Kabul as an illustration, as an illustrative case of what has happened to archaeology, what can be done. Thank you. May I seek your pardon and depart?
That's what they do. They come here and give us teaching, here, and let our families rest. In this presentation, I'm not going to give you a solution. I'm trying to present another, or rather a unique topic, which probably I'm so far the only person around here more concerned about, and that is the public museum, which was the only museum so far in Afghanistan. The historic monument sites and cities in Afghanistan, the archaeology, its trade and education of archaeologists, conservative architects, and art historians. I don't remember actually when Kabul Museum was first opened. As you can probably see, I'm the youngest of all these presenters we have seen so far. So would be my experience also limited. And in that connection, I should also say that in contrast to most of the friends who just saw missing Louis Dupree, I am the one who has unfortunately not met Louis Dupree. I knew his name when I was in the 5th class of Kabul University and doing the research in Istanbul. When I returned back to my school, an American professor, Bravo, he told me that what is the height of Istanbul above the sea? I said, I do not know, but the height of Istanbul above the remaining ground is about 500 meters or 400 meters. He told me Louis Dupree writes with 600 meters. That was the first time as a young student I heard the name. And of course I always kept it in my mind, especially when I later in Denmark did research and gathered material and read all the articles of both Louis Dupree and Nancy Dupree that were part of my sources. And I met Nancy actually last Christmas Eve in Hunter's house. You see, everything is very recent. And I'm grateful to her that she paid interest in my interest, and we talked a lot about these things, and now she has invited me to this presentation. Kabul Museum was located in an original town hall building of 1920, built in Darul Aman in the outskirts of Kabul at a time when Amanullah Khan laid out a new city for Kabul as capital. The building was not in reality fit as a museum, but in 1935, James Hacken and all the way down when the archaeologists arrived and the French, Italian, group, they dug around and they found artifacts and moved them into the museum. So that part was used as a museum, and probably the idea was that later on most of the buildings around here should be used as museums. But I have always questioned whether that location was actually a good idea or not, because that area has also been used heavily by military existence, and the original palace of Amanullah Khan has been used for ministries of defense, finance, work, etc., etc. As an outskirt for excursion, of course, it was a good location, but for security reasons, it never was. And it was also like a showpiece only for those who knew about it. I, as a student, first went to see the museum in 1975 when I was in 4th class of architecture. And at that time, a professor of mine in Denmark was sent by UNESCO to design a new museum, and he chose a site, if you know Kabul, Ariana Hotel, across east of the palace, and taking the security in consideration, of course, that part was neither a most suitable position. Anyhow, the project has never been implemented. So what has happened since then? The museum has been visited by foreigners, by scholars, by people who were interested, but probably very few Afghans have visited. They had limited collections, of course, from the different period of Greek Budi, Kushan, also some from later uh, Ghaznavid piece from Lashkar Gah, some Murid elements, but that was all. And most of the collections were, of course, stored in a storeroom and hardly seen because usually the Tawaldar was absent. Lately, we read an article by Louis Dupree 2 years ago, and there were rumors in Kabul, and I even asked yesterday a friend who told me these rumors were true, and everybody in Kabul believed this. The things were being packed in tin boxes and eventually shipped to the Soviet Union. No documentation. And for that reason, of course, UNESCO started to send missions. And last year, a friend of mine, Bruno from Italy, came and he went to Kabul. And he says that yes, they are packing everything, but very systematically with a catalog number, everything in cotton, put in tin boxes. The towelder is putting his signature on top, and these things should be stored somewhere. But where? There was an idea that they should be stored in the center of town, right where the palace is. He rejected the idea that actually it would be more exposed to danger. It's much better to be where it is, and actually it's better to be on the exhibition as they were. And he says that in all these years of 1981, 1984, 1986 that he visited Kabul, the director of the museum, Katawazi, has mentioned to him that they needed a storage place, probably something underground with a good concrete protection so that they can store all these elements. And he says that in April, March 1989, 50% of these collections were put back into boxes, and the operation was, of course, going on. What has happened to it today? Nobody knows. And because of the military operation lately in Darul Aman, which we all know it was a target of rockets, not the Mujahideen sent to Kabul, which originally the Kabul government asked for funds to make this storeroom, but by the rockets sent from the other military quarters and from Mazar Sharif on Kabul. There's no doubt that if the palace in Darul Aman is damaged, probably the museum is damaged also. And probably most of these precious things are lost. And the other thing which I would like to talk about is the monuments. We have had rich monuments in Afghanistan presenting the old excavations and of course the old culture and civilization, starting from Khanum, Surf Kotal, which is all the pre-Islamic period, and then the Islamic period, early Islamic, Ghaznavid, Murid, Safavid, Mughal, and then even later the British or British Indian styles that came up. And the Department of Archaeology, which was sponsored by UNESCO and the government was very proud of, only looked after the super monuments, I should say. They only made some photographs, recorded them somewhere, but no maintenance was done, and some of them were actually lost due to ignorance of maintenance. Government and people also start digging for antique to look after coins, to small artifacts to eventually sell. And there was very little coordination among the different government offices. Some of them were planning a road through a monumental area, somebody was trying to have it agricultural garden or something. So some of these sites were replaced, in favor of new projects for housing, for example, and for building modern structures. And then after that, this is of course until 77, 78, which I have been visiting all these places and seeing. And after that is the damage of war. Most of these monuments were out of control of the government, and if they are located in between of a war zone, of course they were direct targets of artillery, and some of the monuments we have documented are even bombed by the common forces. For example, in Herat, one of the great minarets of the Shahrukh Mosque from 1474 was hit by an artillery and fell down a few years ago. The Dome of Gawar Shah in Khorasan, the Dome of Gawar Shah in Herat were all bombed. The mausoleums of Shahzadaha, the very early Timurid structures, which was also restored by the Safavid due to bombardment. Kandahar is totally destroyed. Tashmuhan, the old city of North, is totally destroyed. And above that, most of these sites that are in the hand of the military forces are minefields. In Herat, the area around the minarets are all mined. Razni minaret, all mined. Hada in Jalalabad is all mined. And there has been no lack of, there has been no maintenance, and all of them suffer, of course, due to the natural causes, lack of maintenance. And after that, what worries me more is the trade of archaeology. I have seen some shopkeepers selling the antiques. They are so proud that they bought some artifacts so cheap and they sold it so expensive to, sorry to say, the foreigners. There's lack of people understanding to value the historic remains. If a normal man is passing by, he finds a coin or something, well, it's a corroded thing, he will throw it away. But if that thing is collected by an antique dealer, he bring it here and sell it for a fortune. Demolition of building elements has even happened. In a place like Nuristan, for example, and Nuristani himself go buy pillars, doors, windows, carved elements, and bring them out for sale. And of course, the people are either hungry or in despair, so they might sell it. And that tradition is not existing any longer, that you can have a normal body and you will produce these carvings. Even in Pakistan, if you go to Swat, you find a lot of these historical antiques that are taken out of mosques, people's houses, and they are sold on the road. And if you go back to the place where they are taken from, the thing has been replaced with steel railings or concrete walls, etc. And because having the influx of refugees in Pakistan, of course Pakistan became the market of all these trades. Things are brought from Afghanistan, especially from the neighboring provinces, into Pakistani market, which then either the foreign dealer come here or they have their routes and send them out. And the other thing which has a value, of course, for museums, for archaeology, for history, is the remains of the military captured items by the Mujahideen. All tanks, well, some of the tanks were of course sold complete, 100% okay. Some of them were destroyed, and we always have witnesses that people take normal gas cutters with them, welding instruments, go inside and cut these tanks into pieces and bring the steel and sell it there to Pakistan, because that probably cannot be taken to Europe or other museums. So it makes this question interesting, that what is the role? Well, we know that Mujahideen, as part of the public, does not understand the value, or some of the Mujahideen as part of the public does not understand the value of these historical remains. But what is the role of all these Western collectors and museums and the scholars to safeguard? So therefore I come to the point of education. As I said, I'm probably the only one who's concerned with this, is because I know that I am the only architect who has studied in restoration and conservation. And I know only one engineer who has studied in Rome in the field of restoration. I knew in Afghanistan 4 people who were trained in Denmark as building technicians, and they helped a lot in restoration until 1977. And that's it. Who would eventually go into this action again to search for these remains, document these sites, and eventually go for maintenance and restoration? We of course need to train people, and these people should be trained in a most technical and scientific way. Well, I can't here propose that we should have scholarships to send them abroad, because I'm not sure whether they will return back or not. But I can at least hope that some of our Pakistani brothers in their institutes open positions, like here in the Institute of Archaeology, in the Institute of Urban Geography I just saw this morning. We have common sites or alike sites, Taxila, Takbahai, all these Cubas in Khyber, Swat. They are very much alike to our pre-Islamic sites in Afghanistan. And the Islamic sites, of course, we have a lot in Pakistan, start from Balkan, Lahore, and even Peshawar. The cities are also very much, the historic cities are also very much similar, where you can find all these things. But the question is, how can we raise the interest of the general people to value these things? If you take a walk inside the old city of Peshawar and be a little bit careful, and eventually put yourself in the shoes of or the owner of those houses who is standing there, or eventually use the small chisels to make those wooden carvings. And today their children or grandchildren are careless because they have properties in Murray Hills or Bindi or Karachi, and all these houses in Peshawar are just empty and nobody even used them. And eventually how the resources should be channeled, where the funds should be found, and the literature, documentation, and further survey missions, and who will be the corresponding institutes to assist. And to conclude, I asked Nancy yesterday that if tomorrow the weather is okay and you people are going to Khyber, I would like to have a talk at the Buddhist stupa. See what you can find. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Natini. It was a pleasure for me to hear about the Kabul Museum, because it is through the Kabul Museum that my husband and I went for the first time to Kabul. He was invited to be there to work as an advisor, and it is thanks his work in the Kabul Museum that coming myself from Tehran for summer vacation that we met, and later we married. So I'm especially indebted to the Kabul Museum. I will now give the floor to Professor and retired professor, as I told you to say, and to the retired director of the Peshawar Museum, who will speak about the archaeology team from the Peshawar in Pakistan.
Very much for giving me an opportunity to talk to you. Uh, as it is in memory of you today, I know him when I was a student, and I didn't see him before. But it was through Mr. F.A. Durrani, who was now in Islamabad, that he gave me a tiny little book, A Guide to Kabul Museum, which was written by Louis Dupree. So, and then later I personally met him. His contribution, you know him from all the angles, and my vision about this man is from another angle, that is archaeology. He was a great archaeologist, and he made a great contribution to the world of archaeology, especially about Afghan archaeology, and to this part of the world also. So now, it is the responsibility of Nancy to continue his mission in Afghanistan as well as in Pakistan. Because I know Nancy was there writing booklets, brochures about the archaeological sites in Pakistan. Now, I'm pleased to see that this conference is being held in Peshawar, which is the base in Central Asia. So, Peshawar and Kabul, they are closely knit together. So when I was a student of history and archaeology in the University of Peshawar, there used to be, we used to read one topic, they call it cultural zones of India. So this article was written in the year 1910, probably in the National Geographic Society. So he had divided India into the cultural zones. So this part of the world, I mean the present Northwest Frontier province, falls into the cultural zones of Central Asia. So whosoever moves in the city of Peshawar, I mean particularly in the old city of Peshawar, he will physically he will feel as if he is in Peshawar, but mentally he will feel that as if he is in Central Asia. So in the same article, F.J. Richard had written that this part of the world was always stirred by political movements, by cultural movements. So whatever activity took place in Central Asia, so this part was always influenced. And he uses the word Peshawar as a transformer for passing on cultural and political currents from Central Asia to India and from India to Central Asia. So, inshallah, when there is a free and independent Afghanistan, such meetings will be held there too, and will be becoming more closer and closer. So, I know personally to tell you, my own specialization is Buddhist art and architecture of South Asia. Just we know whatever has been done in Afghanistan, we know this much that it was all through the French archaeological mission, which had a monopoly of archaeology in Afghanistan, and a little bit of work done by the Germans. So, the better would be for whosoever writes a book on Afghanistan, we usually read it in English. So, a little bit of information about the archaeology of Afghanistan is through the British or through the American writers. So, it would be a great contribution of this assembly, this August organization. So, whatever work has been done in French, Italian, or German, if this is translated into English, it would be of great value to the world of love. So then the pathetic picture, you see, which our learned speaker gave us about the all when this was going on, my 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 knowing about Afghanistan is through art and architecture. So it was once upon a time a great center of civilization. Islamic history is as clear as crystal. But what happened in Afghanistan before Islam, that is the responsibility of the archaeologists. So we know this much that from prehistoric times right up to 1990. What is happening? There is a continuity of history. There is the sequence of history does not rest in Afghanistan. So we are indebted to Afghanistan. That is through these Silk Road and through various other. So it was a great center of the Buddhist movement also. The Chinese pilgrims like Ivan San, Fahian, Kipsing, Sun Yun, who came in search of the Buddhist scriptures to this area, they visited Afghanistan and they wrote about the monasteries and stupas of Afghanistan. So these records in the Chinese accounts, Afghanistan or this Gandhara region, is very clearly mentioned. So it was the cradle of the Buddhist civilization too, the Mahayana form of Buddhism, which traveled from this area to Tibet, China, Korea, and Japan. And the journey from when I say this area, the journey takes about 500 years to travel, or the march of Buddhism takes about 500 years to travel from this part of the world to Nara in Japan. So, much more is to be done here. And when the last days were there, when the Italian archaeological mission are going on, so it is our responsibilities. So the political history or whatever call it, political history, for me, it is the cultural history which is more important, you see. So Afghanistan had
a rich cultural heritage. But due to this war for 11 long USR, the destructive picture is already given by our friend here. So this destructive, now it is to be built. Afghanistan is to be built, you see. So a nation without a heritage is nothing for me. Reading in books is another picture, you see. And seeing the things with your own eyes is another picture, you see. So seeing a visionary view or looking at the things with your own eyes is more important than the reading in the books or reading the articles published in it, you see. It is more effective, you see. So with this destruction of the archaeological heritage in Afghanistan, which my good friend had pointed out, you see, it has created a very sorrowful picture, you see, in my mind, you see. Now, as far as the training is concerned, I may point out to our worthy gentleman here that there is a department of archaeology in the University of Peshawar, you see. So, if this is my personal view, let me explain it to you. Now, I have retired. So, there is a department of archaeology in the University of Peshawar which awards master's degree in archaeology. So, once upon a time, we had many students from Thailand and from Japan too, when Professor Bani was here. So now the department is very efficiently run by Dr. F. A. Durrani, whose seat I have taken today, who was my teacher too. So when there is a rebuilding of the heritage in Afghanistan or the conservation of the archaeological sites in Afghanistan, you see, so if the Afghan students are admitted here, so those who obtain their master's degree from this department of archaeology of the University of Peshawar, they are occupying very important positions in the museums of Pakistan, in the Department of Archaeology, Government of Pakistan. So that won't be a big problem. Kabul and Peshawar, they are very close, you see, a couple of minutes air travel. So inshallah, they will be great. So it is my personal, you see, a request to this August gathering that all the works written in French, German, Italian, on the archaeological heritage or on the museums of Afghanistan, they must be translated into English. So that we are coming, after that we are coming in closer contact, because heritage is when you do not know the history. I told you, I always said that the Islamic history is as clear as crystal. But what happened to it before Islam? It is the job of the younger generation, new scholars of Afghanistan. I know this much living in Peshawar, that right from prehistoric times to modern times, you see, there is a plenty of material in Afghanistan, you see. So, and my personal opinion is that this is because my teacher, Professor A. Shani, had given me a very good time, that this is your country, this is your language, this is your heritage. You know better than anybody else. So Afghanistan is a country of the Afghans. They know their history. They know their culture, you see. Now the responsibility, one of the most important responsibilities of the Afghan nation is that they should write. We shouldn't depend on the secondary sources. So it is their responsibility. It doesn't matter if you get training in America, if a foreign country, you go for the courses. But you should have your own viewpoint. And that is the confidence which was inculcated into my body, into my script by Professor H. Dani. So it is when the reconstruction starts in Afghanistan, that is, we have to take the help from the scholars, from others. But your view, your interpretation of the sites, your interpretations of the objects in the museum should be your own. Now, let us pray to Allah that it is everything and there is a free movement. All the scholars, Western scholars, American, and they can go to Afghanistan, and they can study the objects very well. So, if they need, because once upon a time I remember that there was a big flow of the foreign tourists to Afghanistan. It was the most fascinating part of the world for the foreigners, you see. But after the Russian takeover, everything has come to a standstill. And it is open to the West. I think more and more information will be communicated to the masses. And we hope that just the problem as from yesterday to today, we have been discussing about the food problem, about the aid problem. So either UNESCO should jump into this problem that what about the heritage of Afghanistan? So food, other technology, industries and like that. It is one aspect of life. When one loses his empathy, when one loses his heritage, it means it is the greatest destruction caused to a nation. So it is your responsibility to protect it, to present it, and to interpret it. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Fidaullah Serai, and remembering us that Afghanistan has this big responsibility to keep his heritage not only for itself, but for others, because all the archaeology, all the past of Afghanistan belongs also to the whole humanity. Dear Nancy, first of all, I would like to say in my name and in the name of Pierre, who unfortunately couldn't come here, but who is in thought with us today, how honored and touched we have been to be invited among all your friends to this seminar in tribute to the memory of Louis. And I want to express my warmest thanks to you, to Professor Rasulami, and to the organizers. Our first meeting in Kabul with Louis and Nancy took place in the 60s. And coming back from the field in the north of Afghanistan, it was always wonderful to find their home in Kabul so warmly open to all of us. I'm an anthropologist, so what can I say about archaeology, literature, and languages? So I will speak of my own field. My husband and I have been working in the north of Afghanistan in the 60s and 70s, studying in rural areas Tajik and Uzbek communities, and studying especially the interethnic relationships, identity, and the local village leadership. In the 80s, noticing that our data were no more accurate to the present situation, and without possibility to carry our research inside Afghanistan, and without wishing also to shift to another field, we decided to continue on the same topics, but among the Afghan refugees in Pakistan, either in Afghan refugee villages, I don't like to speak of camps, or in towns like Quetta and Karachi. So I will give some features of our last field research. One of the most important things lies in the fact that the Afghan society is not perhaps the disunited one, but a disrupted one. Disrupted between an urban population under the rule of the Kabul government. Segments of the population living in large rural areas under the orders of commanders and amirs of the resistance, and millions of refugees living partly in refugee villages or in towns, cities in Pakistan, partly in cities and suburbs in Iran, not to speak, of course, of the Afghans who migrated to other countries. Even specially separated, these different parts of the Afghan people are quite often in close contact, and it's always amazing to notice how the people know exactly where the other members of the family are, and that they are always in contact and having as soon as possible news, even coming out of Afghanistan for a wedding here in Pakistan and going back to Afghanistan. There is this constant relation between the ones who remain in the country, either in the areas controlled by Kabul or in the areas controlled by the resistance, and the ones who are refugees in Pakistan and in Iran. Inside Afghanistan, compared to the situation of 1978, where 55% of the population lived in rural areas, one of the most striking phenomena is the quick growth of the towns and cities and the urbanization of the society. It has been quoted already this morning, but I just want to say that we always speak that the 80% of the territory is under the control of the resistance. It's true. but it is not 80% of the population. For instance, the population of Kabul, which was in the early 70s of 500,000, could be, according to various sources, between 1.5 and 2 million inhabitants. Mazar was about 100,000 inhabitants in 78, and now it's 3 times more at least. Nearly all the towns and cities, even Kandahar, even Jalalabad, has seen their population increase double and more, with the exception of Herat and Khost, which have seen considerable exodus of their original population due to heavy fighting. So inside Afghanistan, the countryside is underpopulated. The people are either in towns and cities or in exile, so that the agrarian ownership system is showing the effect. Some regions are no more under cultivation. It has been quoted already, but it's perhaps good to say it once more. Others are cultivated by close relatives of the owners, themselves in exile, who come sometimes once a year at the time of the harvest. So the situation leads towards a system of absenteeism of the big landlords. And it's important too, because most of the leadership in the rural area was based on the possession of the land.